launch in. Our guest has over 35 years of experience in mental health and holistic medicine. Known as the Magnet Lady, she is here to share insights on biomagnetism. Please welcome Gaya Stepanian. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. Look forward to
my pleasure. My pleasure. Well, one of my beliefs is everybody wants better health. And the reason why I say that is because I've never met somebody who said, I want worse health. So I believe that we all want better health, and all of us are on a type of healing journey. That could be physically. I was an athlete for many years, and we had to work on the physical body. We also have emotional healing, and a lot of us are carrying things deep inside of us that might not belong to us. We've got mental health. We want to have better mental health, and we also want to have better spiritual health. And I believe that everybody wants a little improvement in any one of those four areas. And I'd love to learn about biomagnetism and how that helps us heal.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because biomagnetism, the way I see it, is kind of like that bridge between most people who find it are looking to heal the physical body, but through it, they find that really at the root of everything that we're going through physically, there are emotions that are trapped. And as we heal both the physical and the emotional, then the spiritual awakening or further evolution happens. And so it really is a wonderful way in which we can heal our physical body, our emotional health, our mental health, and our spiritual growth. It certainly has done that for me and for the people that I've had the privilege of working with.
I remember when I was growing up, my grandfather would stick magnets all over himself. And so somewhere along the line, he'd learned about biomagnetism. And when you're under 10 years of age, you're trying to figure out, why is grandfather covering himself with magnets? He'd put them on his knees, his wrists, his arm. He'd put them on his temples. He'd say that he was healing. And I knew he was doing something there, and I knew he was getting a benefit because he seemed to have done it for a very long time. And so for me, 40 years ago, I had seen people healing with magnets, along with wearing I think it was the copper bracelet around his wrist. And he would have been trying to absolutely heal his physical body because he had been a boxer in his younger years. So he would have had a lot of wounds, but he probably drank too much alcohol as well.
You know, in recorded history, we know that magnets have been used in every continent on this planet for at least 5,000 years. So Cleopatra, who was a scientist, and I think she spoke, I don't know how many languages, she spoke a lot of languages, and she was a physicist and chemist and biologist, and she knew anatomy. She used magnets. In fact, people at that time used magnets for all sorts of healing on the physical, emotional, and spiritual side. She would use it for anti-aging. She would use magnets for spiritual awakening, and certainly for reducing inflammation, which is what, I'm sure your grandfather was also using it for. So that wisdom has gotten passed down over the years, and it's wonderful when, our elders have been able to maintain that knowledge.
Magnets, without us knowing, they seem to be everywhere. There's a magnet inside of my microphone to amplify my voice. There's also magnets inside of my headphones. There's magnets inside of my speaker that amplify your voice. So obviously we're using them for this type of communication, whether we're aware of it or not. But if the ancients had been using magnets to heal their body many years ago, it's probably that technology has been lost for a period of time or not spoken about. So going back to Cleopatra, what was their thinking all the way back then?
Well, what they knew, and even before her time, was that the Earth is a huge magnet, right? It has a magnetic field. What we call gravity is really a magnetic field, right? And so when we're outside of that magnetic field, our physical health deteriorates, our mental health deteriorates. And this has been proven With astronauts, once they leave the Earth's magnetic field or gravitational field, when they come back from space onto Earth, they have a shorter leg, they have inflammation, they develop immune disorders, digestive issues, anxiety, a gamut of issues. And so that's more in recent history, but in ancient history, we have Aristotle who believed and understood and taught how magnets could help us heal. Tesla certainly understood that. Einstein understood that. Nostradamus understood that. Queen Elizabeth understood that. In fact, the doctor that she selected, she picked because he used magnets to help people heal. And so the knowledge, I think, in the last 200 years is where it really kind of got shady and lost. I think a lot of natural medicines got lost to oblivion because conventional medicine kind of took over and it replaced our understanding or belief or the credibility of this ancient wisdom. And now, with I think some of the challenges that we're seeing in conventional medicine, people are starting to reconnect with this ancient wisdom. And if the Earth is a huge magnet, we know that the closer we are to the equator throughout the Earth, there's more biodiversity, right? If we look at all along the equator, we have green spaces. And so you have more flora and fauna. In fact, healing happens quicker. The further we get from the Earth's equator, where those magnetic fields are more balanced, then you have ice caps. It's harder to survive on the poles. There's less life forms. And so magnetism, both within the planet and within our own cells, is what really kind of shows us where we are in terms of our health. It's kind of like that gauge of how healthy we are versus how far we are from our health.
Interesting. You mentioned about the astronauts. I was reading a book called Tuning the Body's Biofield, and they referred to it as space sickness. So as the astronauts left the Earth and went to space, they weren't exposed to the Earth's heartbeat, or what's referred to as the Schumann resonance frequency. And so once they came back to Earth, they were sick. And so then NASA, they introduced Schumann generators to generate that frequency, 7.83 around there, for them up in the space station, so they didn't experience space sickness anymore. And so they were tuning the body's biofield, and that was critical for the NASA space missions, and I believe it still takes place today. But as the way that you describe it, as the Earth being a big magnet, I've never heard of it like that before, but it makes a lot of sense because a magnet is always attracting something. And when I jump on the trampoline, I don't keep going up. I always come back down.
Right. We're still within the Earth's magnetic field, so it's going to attract back down. Actually, now that you mentioned NASA, there was this, the chief medical director of NASA in the 80s, Richard Broringmeyer. He introduced biomagnetism when he saw how the astronauts had come back so sick. He started applying magnets therapeutically to them and was able to write papers and books on the restoration of their health and mental health. And I think from that, NASA realized, oh, this is about magnetism, and we need to do something to recalibrate their cells, because at the end of the day, our cells are positive and negative and one neutral charge. So we have a neutron, protons, and electrons. And so, in high school or middle school, we learned about these things. I didn't really understand why it was important or relevant, but everything really in the universe is in relation to these electric, positive, negative, neutral charges. And certainly in healthy cells, that balance of positive to negative is key. It's like how you jumpstart a car. You put in the red and the black, and together those charges, those electric charges, positive and negative, jumpstart the car battery. The same thing happens when we apply magnets to our body. When we apply magnets using the polarities that we need, we can jumpstart our organs and heal, recalibrate our health, and eliminate the things that have made us sick or created imbalance.
That image in my mind of a jump start I think we all need that. Sometimes we refer to it as coffee. Some people use sugar, and many other things, but we do look for that jumpstart. And I noticed that when I hit about 40, a lot of changes were taking place in my body. And the first thing that I noticed was that the foods that I used to be able to eat pre-40 had a very different impact on the body. I didn't have a tolerance for certain foods anymore. Or if I ate a certain food, I must put on like 5 kilos immediately. The body pops, the belly pops, the inflammation shows up in the body, where pre-40 that didn't happen. After 40, I noticed that my sleeping habits also started to change. Going to the gym, I would get injured a lot easier. And I'd even say to my personal trainer, go easy on me. I don't want to wake up tomorrow with sore muscles. I don't want sore joints. I don't want to risk an injury. And I really noticed it as I started to hit 40. So that was a key change for me in that area. With people looking to heal their body, what are some of those physical problems that show up in their bodies, things that they find it really easy to recognize? And the reason why I ask that is that all of us understand that we need to do some emotional healing, but it's a lot harder to name the emotional blockages. Brene Brown, in her book, she said that after she interviewed about 7,000 people, the average person could name 3 to 5 emotions. But physically, we can tend to name where our pain is. And then from there, I think the emotional component becomes better. So when people are looking to heal, what are those physical things that they want to heal?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned age, because right around 40 is when I found biomagnetism, and now I'm about 54, and I'm healthier today than I was.
You look younger. You're getting younger.
Thank you. But it's really, magnets have helped to recreate, kind of take me back in terms of time, unwind time. Why? Because our body, one of the reasons why is that we have filters. Our liver is a filter, our kidneys are a filter, and our lungs are a filter. And these filters, like the AC filter, gets dirty over time, right? We put enough bad food, if we put enough chemicals, if we put enough heavy metals, all these things are going to dirty those filters. And when the filters, the lungs, kidneys, liver, are dirty, our blood is less oxygen and nutrient rich. It's harder to keep a clean house when you have never changed the filter. You see dust in the house, and then the AC breaks down. And so longevity means keeping our filters of our body clean so that we can stay younger longer. When your liver's dirty, you're achy, you do exercise and you hurt, your sleep cycles change, you can get headaches, you feel like you're getting sluggish and older because your blood is not as clean. And the filters having a harder time doing that work because it's dirty. It's gotten dirty. So time, in terms of age, is more a reflection of how dirty our filters are, how many germs we've accumulated, how many toxins and chemicals are affecting those filters, so that the body's having a harder time doing its job of keeping our blood young. So when we clean the filters, and we can do that with biomagnetism, we can do that with certain natural medicines, we can do that with certain types of foods and supplements, then we can reverse the clock and we can go back to feeling youthful again and ache-free, pain-free. I have clients who are in their 80s and 70s who, for the first time came in a wheelchair, and they find themselves walking miles and feeling youthful, and their aches and pains have gone away. So pain is not so much a factor of our age, but of the junk that we've accumulated in the body and needing to clean it up. So we could reverse the clock through biomagnetism and through other natural medicines for sure.
Filters.
Yeah.
I like that. I like it.
Filters.
Yeah, my lungs are filters. I think it was maybe, when was it, 20, what are we now, 2026? I think it was 2023. After we went through that pandemic phase, I had a round of stem cell therapy And I was also doing some sound frequency healing. And I was doing both at the same time. And for about 2 weeks, I was coughing up this white phlegm from my lungs. I was coughing, and all the junk was coming off the filters. Those lungs that had been working every single day without fail started to have a big clean out. And it was interesting as I went through that 2-week period that things that seemed to have been at the bottom of the lungs seemed to come up, because when I was coughing, I wasn't coughing from high up in the chest. I was coughing low in the chest, and it was bringing this stuff up. And when I went through that period, I noticed that afterwards, my health significantly improved. I was able to sustain my energy for longer. I'd be able to return to a normal workout. But also the aging started to reverse in the skin. I could see that those fine lines started to clear up. The elasticity was back in the skin, but also the brightness came back out in the skin. So it makes sense to me, understanding the lungs as a filter, but also the liver as a filter. My Chinese medical doctor, my reports at the hospital always say that I've got a bit of fatty liver. And I've felt when it's not optimal, my energy levels are lower. Mm-hmm. And recently I changed my diet to a keto diet. And for the first couple of weeks, I went into a detox and I lost about 5 kilos, not of muscle mass, but of just what I felt was toxic fluid inside the body. But as the liver started to improve and the diet started to change, my energy got better. I woke up earlier, pain-free, but also during the night, I slept deeper and I had less interruptions during the night, especially around about that 1 to 3 o'clock time in the morning when the liver's most active. I just now sleep through. And so I think that filter's also had a good clean out recently.
And the kidneys, a lot of lower back pain or sciatic pain is related to the kidneys. And people are here, trying to get adjusted and, thinking that they have some kind of spinal issue. And really the pain is that we have meridians that travel from the kidneys all the way down to the tip of the second toe. So a lot of issues around the legs, cramps, sciatic issues, even around the hip area can oftentimes be related to dirty kidney filters, right? Bacteria that we accumulate, parasites that a lot of people don't talk about, although I think in recent years, people are talking more and more about parasites, thankfully. And these filters get dirty just like every other filter in our body. And so as we clean them out, then those kidneys recover and the pain start to disappear. A lot of people think, well, if I drink a lot of water, I should be in good shape. The problem with drinking plain water is that it doesn't have minerals. And the more plain water we drink, the more demineralized we get. And minerals are so key in terms of proper hydration, in terms of proper functioning of every system in our body. So usually I just recommend people to drink lemon water or lime water and add a little pinch of Celtic salt once a day to a glass. And that way we can remineralize the body. But the wonderful thing about the lemon is that it also helps to clean liver and kidney filters. It won't do anything for our lungs, but it can certainly help to clean the crud, maybe not necessarily all the germs, but certainly the crud that accumulates around the liver and kidneys. And it's a simple thing. It's not, you don't have to go spend big money to go help yourself and clean up those filters. Mm.
That makes me rethink my sciatic pain. Maybe this is my therapy session today. I have a dog. He's a big dog. He's a golden retriever and he's come to see me. He likes to listen to the podcast.
Oh, wonderful.
And I've never had a big dog before. I've had smaller dogs, like French Bulldog. And so once I started to walk the golden retriever, he's so strong. And a 35-kilo dog, I believe, is like trying to walk a 120-kilo strongman. And he pulls me around everywhere. And so I noticed that my right hip started to hurt. And I had hip pain. It wasn't hip pain, but near the hip. And so I went through this pain for 6 months. And I went to the doctor. And the doctor did x-rays. And they said, you've got a degenerative disc. And I looked at the x-rays and I thought, there's nothing wrong with these discs. There's no damage. They're all aligned like each other. In my opinion, not medical. It looks fine because I've seen a lot of x-rays before and they look pretty good to me, these ones. But then I went for an MRI. And after I had the MRI, they said, well, there's no problem with the back, which kind of confirmed my original thoughts when I saw the first x-ray. And then I had some acupuncture. And when they were putting the needle in, it was extremely painful. And I thought to myself, my body is tense, but I feel it might even be dehydrated. I feel maybe even the muscles are dehydrated. So after about 6 months of these therapies and taking pain medication and nothing improving, I started to consume creatine. And I learned that if you had 5 grams of creatine a day, you get muscle saturation in about 2 weeks. But if you were mega dosing it at 15 to 20 grams, you could also get saturation into the brain. And I mega dosed creatine, and by the second day, the muscle pain had disappeared. And it was like my body started to hydrate all the big muscles. So I had a lot of relief there. But recently I've noticed the pain has come back. And now that you mention the kidneys, I'm like, oh, okay, I haven't heard this one. And maybe it's something I've got to look into because it's just there and I was adjusting myself before because it was hurting. And so maybe I haven't cleansed the kidneys properly yet.
Yeah, I mean, when we keep our body truly hydrated, and so there's a lot of misnomers on what proper hydration is. People think, oh my God, I got to drink 8 glasses of water a day. And in reality,
multiple of these ones.
They begin retaining water and demineralizing. And so just a pinch of Celtic salt and replacing the plain water with a quarter, the juice of a quarter of a lemon or lime, we can then help these 2 wonderful filters, both kidneys and also the liver, function at a much higher capacity. And we'll notice it in our skin. We'll notice it in even our vision, because the membranes of the body become much more hydrated. People, what I've noticed is when we drink a lot of plain water, we're kind of parched and still thirsty. And that to me is a sign that we're not really truly effectively hydrating. We're just flushing key things out of our system that belong there, like our minerals. And we're not necessarily flushing out germs or crud, just regular grease that kind of can adhere to our, body, our intestines, or our filters. And plain water just doesn't do that.
You mentioned Celtic salt. There's many different types of salt. People get table salt and sea salt and Himalayan salt. Why do you recommend Celtic salt?
Well, I use kinesiology to test everything that I recommend or to find the germs in your body. And so when I compare the different salts, Celtic salt tends to register the highest, but it also is known to have a higher number of minerals, at least 72 minerals. With Himalayan salt, we would have to be a little careful because we don't know if it's coming from China. A lot of it's coming from China, and it may be higher in mercury content, so it not necessarily is clean. So there's a little bit of, weariness in terms of whether it's actually going to be beneficial or not. Whereas Celtic salt does, it's easily available and it has far more minerals. It's much cleaner, and it does, it seems to be doing the body good.
Have you studied the work on David R. Hawkins in his book Power versus Force, or the Spectrum of Human Consciousness?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
Really, really great book. And he talks about applied kinesiology. And he asked a question, why do people like their pets more than humans? And he said that in applied kinesiology, that a dog like a golden retriever calibrates at a level of around about 500, where most humans calibrate at an energy below 200. So golden retrievers very high calibration in kinesiology, but also the way that these dogs were bred, their skull formed differently. So they release huge amounts of oxytocin. inside the brain, and it's contagious for humans.
Well, if you think about dogs in general, they're so full of love for their owners, that they, even owners who can be abusive to most of these wonderful breeds are just so full of love and loyalty. And it's such a high frequency emotion that it just, you feel it. You walk in the room and they're excited that you're there. They're excited, miles before you even get home. They know when you're going to get home. They, are excited even before then. And so they're already sending that frequency of love and just genuine loyalty. You are their rock, their everything. And so they do that for us. They really do that for us. It's beautiful.
My dog Murray, he wants to sit here, and if I don't pat him after 10 seconds, the big black nose gets on the side of the arm. Give me attention. On social media last night, they must have realised we were going to talk about rock salt, and a photo came up, and it said Himalayan rock salt, 250 million years old. And it was crushed, it was put into a container, sold at a supermarket with an expiry date of 2024. So people are asking the question, how is it can be 250 million years old and great for us, but there's an expiry date on it? And that's a concern here. Even I have a salt lamp here in Taiwan. When we have our salt lamps, it's very important that we understand where they come from, because when we heat them up, they start to release chemicals in the air. And a lot of people have had problems of that in their homes from the high mercury level and coming out of certain places around the world. So even here in Taiwan, we're very mindful of the salt rocks we have in the house. But that's very different to consuming it. And I think whatever we put in our mouth, we should try to vet as good as possible. I think that's very important. And so that Celtic salt with the additional minerals makes sense.
Yeah, I love teaching kinesiology because when we can do that for ourselves, when we're able to connect with that inner wisdom that we have, then we don't have to rely so much on external opinions. It's not that they're not valid sometimes, but we can distinguish between the truth and the charlatan, right? We can distinguish between what's right for us and what might be right for somebody else, but not necessarily for us. Because there's no everything is good for everybody. We can always test to see, well, what's right for me? Would lemon water be the right thing for me? Would lime water be the right for me? Do I have high histamine levels, and would lemons and citrus things not be good for me at all? Would Celtic salt actually be beneficial for me or not? So, when we learn to really connect with the information's inside us, then we begin to trust that inner gut. And that inner gut is, ready for the taking. It's trying to guide us in life. It's trying to tell us what fits, what doesn't fit, what's good for us, what's not good for us. And it's such a wonderful tool to learn.
Kinesiology, a wonderful tool. I think one challenge for a lot of people is they don't trust themselves. And that's something that they've got to learn to do over time. And for many years, I have taught people how to set and achieve goals. And everybody knows that goal setting is important. Everybody knows that they should have a goal. But people have a track record over time of setting a goal and then quitting on it really early. And what they lose along the way is they lose trust in themselves. They make bad decisions and they don't trust those decisions anymore. But I think as they start to build trust within themselves, and then using technologies like kinesiology, they can get back in contact with that inner sense of knowing, that instinct, that intuition. But they've got to build it up over time. I know myself, men and women are both intuitive. Women tend to listen to their intuition better than men, and then men go and do silly, dangerous things. And they hurt themselves. Hey, I'm on a podcast, excuse me.
No. She's excited. Is it a she?
He.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's
He's got
excited.
he's got 7 toys, and he tries to put all 7 in his mouth at one time.
Okay.
And then when I'm on the podcast, he wants to come and speak to me. So my wife Ninny's trying to hustle him out of the room.
I had a box.
As long as he doesn't start to do zoomies, I think they call him. He spins around in circles.
Yeah. I had a boxer, and he would, like my Reiki teachers, they would hold Reiki circles in my house years ago. And every time they held a circle, our boxer would come in and be in the middle, and he could see things that everybody else couldn't see. And he would go and like try to get on top of one of the participants, as in protecting them or comforting them. And we didn't know what he could see, but he was always very present. And they sense so much more. They're so much more intuitive.
Very intuitive. I was here in my room, and I had my singing bowl, and I was doing a traditional Taiwanese healing, and I do one for my dog. And so every time I would do the sound bowl, and I'd call his name, and he's in the room trying to get out. I want to go out. I want to go out. And I'll do a healing for him, and he'll just sit there for 10 or 15 minutes, and he'll enjoy the vibe. But he always pays it back. Like you were saying before, they are very high vibration, and it's an unconditional love for their master.
Exactly.
And I've seen people do terrible things to animals, but the animal still has that unconditional love.
Their love is so great that they will, at an unconscious level, but at a soul level, take a disease from us first. So usually when a pet and not just dogs, cats do it, even chickens, I have chickens, they'll do it. They'll take the hit first for us. That's how much they're grateful for our love and care, that they will take a health hit first. So we have to observe the health of our pets, because in some way they're signaling things that they're trying to prevent from us in the long run.
I believe that. I know a lot of animals with the material that I've read, sometimes they'll just keep sniffing a particular area of their master. Could be a knee or it could be a hip. And what they're smelling there, as an example, could be the early growth of a cancer, some form of disease. And they'll keep putting their nose on that place over and over and over and again, trying to get your attention there. Exactly. And then mysteriously, well, it's not mysterious, it's cause and effect. They know what's happening. It'll show up later on in the person's body, which is, if we pay attention, we can see it. We were talking about physical health. A lot of people have emotional blockages, and emotions are interesting things because they don't run on a schedule. And just because we can't feel a certain emotion right now, it doesn't mean it's not there. And in that process of healing and having better health, my belief is that people want to have better physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. And once they start to work on the physical body, they tend to get a different type of energy back. And that energy enables them to move to the next level and start to work on their emotions. With the biomagnetism, what type of improvements are people having in their emotional health through the use of magnets?
It's incredible because, our body speaks to us through disease and through symptoms. It tells us what we need to heal emotionally. So there's certain emotions that will hide within certain organs or certain tissues. We're talking about the lungs. Now the lungs, they're a yin yang. And when we talk about the skin, you mentioned the skin and how you cleaned up your lungs and your skin started to rejuvenate. And that's because in Chinese medicine, they're yin yang organs. In other words, one influences the other, right? We have pores. Those pores breathe, and they can, absorb toxins through the skin, which ultimately can make it through the bloodstream and affect our lungs. And vice versa. We clear out our lungs and our skin gets brighter and, more beautiful. But our lungs really tell a story about sadness or grief or loss or guilt. And so when we look at, for example, the minute I catch a cold, usually nowadays it's because I've had some kind of moment with my children in which I've said something and maybe I wasn't as nice about it, or I said something like a little on the harsh side, or I got upset. And within that same day, I'll get a sore throat. The next day I'll start to sneeze, and then I have congestion, and it's like, darn it, I should have stayed in my harmonious space, but I let something that my kids said or do trigger me. And it's almost like the universe is saying, okay, you're a healer. You don't get a pass. You gotta like stay, you gotta walk the walk, talk the talk, and you don't get a pass because the symptoms are going to hit you fast. It's a matter of awareness. And so perhaps when I was younger, I did a lot of things to then develop a chronic bronchitis. But that chronic bronchitis was more of a story of where I was holding in sadness, holding in some kind of grief or loss. And so every symptom is a signal from the body telling us what we need to heal emotionally. The thing is that most people have not learned how the body is really telling us a story about what we need to heal. When we begin to uncover this, then we realize, oh, this symptom is telling me this. The knees, for example, we hold our fears in our knees. And Hollywood seems to have gotten this very clear, because when you look at the cartoons from back in the day, every time in a cartoon you see that the knees are shivering, right? The knees are shaking. It's because they're scared. So pain within our knee, or even injuries, I believe, are not coincidences. They're not accidents. It's your body is telling you there's something that you need to release in terms of fear. What are we fearful of that is now affecting our knees and how we walk in life? Are we stumbling in life because we're not firm in our confidence? We're kind of shaken. And so, if we have some kind of foot injury, are we being slowed down so that we can observe? Are we having a hard time standing in the world and knowing where we want to be, what we want to do, who we are, where we stand within a family, where we stand within our community? Are we not being true to who we really are? Are we doing what others want or expect from us versus doing what we really is going to make us happy, what really is going to be fulfilling for us? And back pain could also be a reflection of that curvature. Where are we not standing in our power? Where are we not feeling supported? Where are we, I'll give you an example. My son, 2 years ago, he wasn't in his power. He wasn't in his integrity. He was kind of like, a little lost. And he had an accident. He flew off his scooter. He broke a bunch of ribs, 14 in 16 different places. He had 3 hairline fractures. And so I began to work on him with biomagnetism. And through the application of the magnets, within a month, he was back at the gym lifting weights, if you can believe that or not. But a single rib could take anywhere between 3 to 5 months to heal. And here he was within a month, recovered physically. And then within 2 months, he had this like enlightening moment, right? Because the work helped him not only heal physically, but it helped him realign himself to where he was, where he wasn't within his integrity, and what he needed to do to get himself there. It was those aha moments that come when we do this kind of inner work. And many people, most people that I see in biomagnetism are coming for physical healing, but through it and through the storytelling, because, if I see that there's something going on with, lower back or kidneys or knees or, like headaches, it's telling me a story. And as I begin to ask those questions and they realize, oh yeah, or sometimes they say, oh no. If I say, it looks to me like you're holding a lot of anger within your body. And they'll oftentimes will say, I'm not angry.
I'm not an
I'm
angry
not
person.
angry. And then, maybe the ex-boyfriend or the ex-husband or someone, family member comes up, and even in the physical reaction to the, I'm not angry, I forgave them a long time ago. I'm not angry at them anymore. And so the body language is saying, well, okay, you want to believe that you're not angry, but you still are angry. And even if they deny it within the next session or within a week, they'll text me or call me and say, I didn't realize I was holding on to all this anger. And it starts to surface, and then they can work on it. And it's a beautiful thing because a lot of, as you were mentioning, a lot of emotions are beneath the surface and we're not aware of it. Sometimes something can help us become aware of it, or someone can help us become aware of it. And sometimes confronting the things that we're holding inside isn't easy, but that's when the real healing happens, when we are able to really confront ourselves and be honest with ourselves. So
That emotion of anger is an interesting one because people get into a conscious habit of suppressing it. So they get angry and they don't want to express it. But anger comes out in your physiology. It's how you hold your body. It's how you move. It's your facial expressions. It's that tension in the jaw. It also comes out in our tone of voice, the anger. And it also comes out in our choice of words. And a lot of people, because they don't feel it's sociably acceptable to express the anger, they suppress it. But then over time, the process of suppressing the anger or the emotions becomes unconscious and they don't realize that they're doing it anymore. And there's an old quote that I love is that unexpressed emotions never die. They just come out in uglier ways. And often that uglier way is, for example, it could be a problem in the knee or the back or in the liver. And that problem starts to manifest. But people now are focused on the physical, but they forget about the root cause, which was the emotional component. And when I speak to my clients about anger, they'll say, I'm not an angry person. So it's not about being an angry person. Anger is a natural emotion. And if somebody is treading on your toes, the emotion of anger builds frustration and your arms are going to push that person off your toes so they don't do damage. But a lot of people don't do that. They don't enforce their boundaries. They let people walk all over them. They allow their family members to talk down to them. And because they don't protect their boundaries, it's also a form of acceptance that the other person says, well, I'm allowed to treat this person this way. I yell at them, I scream at them, I abuse them, I blame them, and they do nothing. And so it's a form of acceptance. And then we have this terrible loop that somebody gets angry, we don't enforce our boundaries, we don't show anger, and we don't push them off the toes. But then it starts to come out in uglier ways. And for a lot of people with the liver, they'll have sleep disturbances between 1 and 3 a.m. in the morning. And they'll wonder, why am I waking up? Why is my skin breaking out in these big pimples? Why is the toxicity now in my face? Now, anger's a normal and natural emotion, and we should express the anger. Now, we've got to do it in a way that we don't hurt ourselves or others. But the ultimate expression of anger is, hitting someone or something. We don't have to get that far. But we've got to deal with it as it comes up before it manifests physically in the body.
yeah, it's when we are honest with ourselves, then it's easier to be honest with others. To be honest with ourselves, we have to look at our truths. We have to be willing to say, I am mad. I am angry. I have rage,
And you're allowed to.
And now what do I do with it? And how do I then let it go and not give someone else the power by saying, well, it's their fault. Yes, people can do things. But if we understand that we are also magnetically attracting things because we're still harboring certain emotions, then those situations repeat themselves as cycles. If, let's say, dad was an angry person or a violent person, and then we are holding on to resentment towards dad, and then now we find that the men that show up in our life are not loving or kind or supportive, and then we wonder, why is this happening to me? Well, what have we not healed yet? We haven't healed dad, and we're still angry at this important male figure in our life. And so other people in places of authority or in places of that male role model, are going to keep showing up. And I believe they show up as teachers. They show up because there's something that we still need to heal. And so I don't believe it's a coincidence. And I don't believe that it's happening to us anymore. I may have thought of that many years ago, but I do believe that they're showing up so that we can finally heal and see the patterns and cycles that we've been attracting. And I know that that might be a big pill to swallow for many. I know it was for me at one point. But when we can begin to piece together and maybe start to question whether in some way are we attracting these cycles? Is there something unresolved? And if we can piece together that, yeah, we still are angry at this significant male role in our life, then these other men are invitations to heal that finally, so that we no longer attract that. So that now we can attract loving, kind, supportive men in our lives, right? And that's an example. And so in the holistic world, we have those opportunities to see and discover and heal those things. And it's a beautiful thing when we finally are able to recognize it. So when we can get mad, it's like, okay, I don't like this, and I'm going to express that I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. And I can say it just like that. I don't have to say it angry because I haven't bottled it up. I haven't repressed it. It's when we repress and bottle things up because we're trying to think about how our feelings may affect others. And so especially women, and this is true for men too, but I see a lot with women, is that we're trying to keep the peace, right? Let's not create ripples. So we're going to repress what we really want or how we really feel to not create waves, but then it comes out in some kind of passive aggressive way. And that just creates a whole other can of worms and chaos. And it's not healthy for us as women. And so, or for men, because sometimes men do that too. And when we, in the moment, say, no, I don't really feel like having pizza right now. I really am craving Chinese food. Versus, oh yeah, whatever you want, whatever you want, whatever you want. And then inside, we never get to do what I want. We never get to do what I want. Well, but if you haven't expressed it, if you put yourself last, if you haven't said, well, I deserve to have what I want sometimes, and let me then give myself permission to say, this is what I want. I'd really like some pizza today. And I'm not trying to promote pizza, right? Because it
Feeling hungry.
It could be eggs and vegetables, because that's usually what I enjoy eating. But I'm just saying, expressing what we want and expressing how we feel will go a long way in terms of keeping us from developing disease or symptoms that really are just stuck because we haven't been legitimately honest with others about what makes us happy and what doesn't make us happy.
You were talking about guilt before, and I read a very good article many years ago, and it was called The Definitive Guide to Guilt. And it mapped out 5 different types of guilt. The first one was guilt for things that we've done, guilt for things that we want to do but we haven't done, guilt for thinking that something we've done has hurt somebody else. We then have a guilt which is a form of compassion fatigue. And then we have the 5th type of guilt, which is a survivor guilt. And I looked at these 5 types of guilt and I thought, I've experienced all of these. The first one, guilt for the things I've done, that's really easy to understand. Guilt for thinking I've done something to hurt somebody else, well, that makes sense. I've broken up with plenty of girlfriends and didn't give them a good reason. But the 3rd type of guilt for things that I want to do that I haven't done, that was really fascinating. And the reason why it's fascinating is in my type of field, I'm helping my clients set and achieve their goals. And every time we set a goal and we fail to fulfill the mission and achieve the goal, we experience guilt. And so a lot of people have this bad habit and they call it Quitter's Day. Strava, an exercise company, they did some research and they said that about 90+% of people quit on their goals or their New Year's resolution within 14 days. So January 1 comes around, 1 million people have set goals. Majority of those people, 90% of the population, have already quit on that goal before the 14th day. And it evokes guilt. And then what happens the next year when somebody comes to set another New Year's resolution, is they're carrying this guilt, because last time they said, I'm going to do this, and I failed to do it. So they set the goal, they have a feeling of guilt, but they also know that they're in a pattern of self-sabotage. So before the end of the 1st of January, they're already feeling guilty from the past, but they also know that they're going to sabotage their own success again. And that tends to happen over and over again. And it's this form of guilt that a lot of people don't realize that they're carrying. And then how does it come out in the body? What I've noticed with my clients is a lot of them wake up with a shortness of breath. And it's between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning. And when we get down to it, is they're grieving a loss. And the loss that they're grieving is the future that they anticipated and set for themselves through the goal-setting process. They said, I went through all of that energy to set this goal and I failed to achieve it. Now I'm grieving the loss of the future that I wanted. And when I looked at that, I was like, this is fascinating, because that guilt, that grief then manifests in the chest. They try to solve the chest problem, but it's actually a deeper rooted emotional problem coming from the guilt.
Guilt brings punishment is what it does. It's truly like, I was raised Catholic. And so, when I used to go to
get those guilt hooks in early. If you're Catholic, got to get them in.
Oh yeah. Heavy guilt, which was something that I had to peel away because, I felt guilty for asserting what I wanted. I felt guilty for not sacrificing. There were so many layers to that guilt. Like if we're trained that, through sacrifice, you're gonna find heaven's door, versus how about if I'm happy and I be the best version of myself as a human? I realized that I could be the best mother if I was happy, instead of carrying the burden of sacrifice, which ultimately creates resentment. It's based on guilt. It brings punishment and unhappiness and frustration and disease. And so as I began to peel away that guilt, right, because it was bred in this programming, I'm not trying to bag on religion, but definitely in my experience.
It's the basis of all religions. It's the basis of all laws and legalities.
And when we understand that we have a divine right to be happy, and that doesn't mean we have to create unhappiness for others, but when we are loyal to our, the things that we want to do in the world, then that happiness is contagious. And as a parent, then I'm giving my children permission to also be happy and go for what they really want to do in life. Years ago when I left Florida, I left because I wanted to be closer to the mountains. The mountains are they call to me. And so here I was walking away when I thought I was walking away from my work. And I was going to start somewhere new where I knew nobody. And my kids were like, why are you leaving? And why are you selling our home? And they were already adults. And so they were already living their lives. And I felt that I had already done what I needed as a parent for them. And I was now going to choose what was going to bring me happiness. They have seen that, and they have used it as a pillar for their own permission to go where they want to be, to do what they want to do, and to develop their happiness and their success. And I see it in the fruits of what they're creating in their life. And in choosing where I wanted to live, and in choosing to do the work that I love to do versus my traditional career, all the investment of time and study, this is what fills my life. And doing what we enjoy makes life richer. You wake up every day looking forward to what you're going to do. And so living guilt-free has allowed me to live a fuller life, but also to inspire that in my children, in my clients, in my friends who are also seeking that. They're like, well, if she could do it, then maybe I could do it too. And so, I encourage you to be honest with yourself, be loyal to yourself, and give yourself permission to be happy. Many times we think, happiness is going to be because, my partner is going to bring me happiness. But you have to be happy, right? And so that's something that, whether it's in what we do, the hobbies that we create, the place where we live, like that is what's going to bring us a rich mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical life.
That guilt, from the work that I have studied, it also lowers your healing energies. And a lot of us have a lot of guilt, and we're triggered. I got triggered with guilt the other day. Somebody was asking a question and I feel so obligated to answer it. But at the same time, I'm entitled to my own privacy. But out of guilt, I wanted to answer it. And I was having sleepless nights because I felt obligated to respond. I said, no, I'm entitled to my own privacy. You can ask me any question that you want. Doesn't mean I have to answer it. You can ask me any question, but I get to choose. And we shouldn't do things out of obligation. We should do it because we want to. And if you don't want to, you shouldn't be doing it. That's my belief. But those guilt hooks, they get in at an early age, and it's the foundation of the majority of societies. It's the foundation of our legal system. In Australia, it's you've got to prove your innocence. In the French system, you're guilty until proven innocent. It's in every religion. It's in Buddhism, it's in Islam, it's in Catholicism, it's in Christianity. But it's also a very powerful tool that parents tend to use. People can use guilt to get what they want, especially with children. Clean your room or I'll take something away from you. The obligation. No, don't do it. As parents, we can give our kids a clip across the ears, but you realise that's not always the best thing to do. You might give them a slap on the bum, but you realise that the guilt process is a lot easier, but it's unhealthy because those guilt hooks stay in. And a lot of people know it. Their mothers, women, from my research, women tend to be guilt throwers, and the children and the husband tend to be guilt catchers, and they play this game of guilt. And then when you get older, your mum can look at you in a certain way, speak to you in a certain tone of voice, say your name in a particular way, and you go, ah! And you go from 59 or 46 all the way back to age 9 all over again. You go, oh, Mum, stop it. But we've got to be free from that. You recently wrote a book. What was your book about, and why did you write the book?
So the book is called Beyond the White Coat, A Return to Earth's Medicine. And I knew years ago that I would love to write a book. I've always written, whether it was proposals or articles. But I wanted to write something in terms of my journey into healing, because through it, I discovered how, whether it was homeopathy or herbs or through acupuncture, or through biomagnetism, through energy healing, through Reiki, these different experiences that I had in my journey held so much power. And so in that, and through faith and releasing and surrender also. And so the book is really, there's some storytelling in it. And through that, there's a lot of just how you can use certain things to be able to help yourself. Because at the end of the day, there's so much out there that we can use to help ourselves heal, but also to understand, well, what is fibromyalgia, right? In conventional medicine or allopathic medicine, they can't tell us why people have fibromyalgia. Well, in the book, people can understand what creates fibromyalgia, what is behind arthritis, what is behind cancer, and is it really genetic or not? And how we can use these remedies that are, earth-given, God-given to us to help ourselves. There's a little bit of that linking between the emotion and the physical, but certainly tools for people to be able to use, whether they choose to use magnets or homeopathy or herbs, to help themselves clean their gut, to help themselves eliminate migraines, to help themselves eliminate inflammation, and to give them hope, because there's definitely so much out there that most people are unaware of, and they're stuck on taking pills. They're stuck on, do I have to get that surgery? And in reality, before any of that, there are wonderful things that are non-harmful, non-toxic, that can help us reverse the tide, reverse the time, stay younger longer, and age gracefully without pain. So that's what I deliver in Beyond the White Coat, a return to Earth's medicine. And I think it's entertaining too, but of course I might be biased.
There's plenty of things beyond the white coat. And what we use in our business is a lot of sound healing. And one of my clients the other day said for a decade, he's been lucky to have more than 2 hours of constant sleep per night before he has an interruption. In the last couple of years, his wife birthed 2 children, so now he's got more sleep disturbances. And he's been using our sound frequency healing for 6 days, and he's just had his first ever 8.5 hour sleep. No pills, no needles, no operation. Just used the power of sound. And he was so excited. He said, this is awesome. I'm just listening to this soundtrack and I've had 8.5 hours sleep. He was in his coaching session yawning. I said, you look tired. He said, I'm so tired. He goes, I just want to sleep. And for him, that was a big breakthrough.
That was so wonderful.
And from my perspective with our healing modalities is if we can improve our sleep quality, our immune system function improves, our chronic fatigue levels drop, and then we can start to heal emotionally. And if we can get it.
Yeah, you're not hormones balance if you sleep right enough.
Absolutely. The Western world, we frown upon sleep, and we almost praise people who don't sleep. You'll see it on social media every day. It'll be a photo of a city, and there'll be a tower that's 25 stories high, and 99% of the windows are all black. And then there's one light on, and it's the entrepreneur who's grinding it out at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. You know, people celebrate the 5 a.m. club and going to bed at 1 o'clock, but that's not a superpower. You need sleep. In this part of the world, if you go to work and you're sleeping on the job, that's a sign of commitment. In the Western world, if you're sleeping on the job, that's a sign that you lack commitment to the job. But in this part of the world, we prioritize sleep. All of our doctors here, whether it be Western or Chinese doctors, they remind you of the importance of sleep. Get to bed at 10 o'clock. Wake up at 6. Let your body heal. Bring it back into balance. But a lot of people still haven't figured out that sleep's important. We do it every day, and we think by age 46 or 59 we'd master it. We do it every day, but people's sleep gets worse over time. It should get better over time. You should be learning every day how to get a little bit better, how to improve that sleep architecture. For me, recently I went onto a keto diet, so I stopped all sugars. So there's been no sugar in my diet for almost 2 months. There's been no soft drinks. There's been no flour, no salty foods. And my sleep immediately got better, got deeper and less disturbances. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, I should have listened to my doctor a long time ago. But you know, once you get some good sleep, that's addictive.
Quality sleep, right? Because you mentioned with the frequencies, I mean, the quality of his sleep improved. And there's adaptogens, adaptogenic herbs and spices that can also help regulate our nervous system and regulate our sleep cycles that I recommend sometimes to clients. There's ways where we can apply magnets to certain parts of the body, specifically like here in these like points opposite to the widow's crest, where we can help to increase sleep cycles. The pineal gland and the pituitary gland can also, and the tailbone are points where we can apply therapeutic grade magnets to help increase sleep and increase sleep quality. Our adrenal glands, which are our fight flight response. Sometimes people don't sleep because they're problem solving at night in their sleep. So they're having very poor sleep because they're thinking when they should be resting. And so our adrenal glands are like, oh my God, I have a stressful week. I have a stressful meeting. I have to prepare for this. And so instead of sleeping, they're resolving, and then they're more sluggish, and then they're not thinking as clearly. And so instead of it increasing our success, it can detract from our success. So putting magnets, therapeutic grade magnets on our adrenal glands to balance that nervous system and our stress levels so that we can get good quality sleep and not be on high alert all the time is also important. So there's so many wonderful tools that we can have, like the sound frequencies that really are talking to our cells and helping to restore health. It's a beautiful thing.
All these little 1% improvements. If we just get a little bit better in sleep, if the immune system function gets a little bit better, if the emotional management becomes a little bit better, if the mental health gets a little bit better, we deal with those anxieties, those moods, those stresses, then we get to the good stuff, the spiritual health. And as a spiritual being, I think once we solve the physical, the emotional, the mental, we start to come back into alignment and we start to find our purpose, because we don't have to spend all the energy trying to fix the physical or the emotional or the mental, but we start to realize that our life does have meaning. And I believe as we start to heal, we start to develop a lot more courage. And if the physical health is good, if the emotional health is good, if the mental health is good, we've got the courage to pursue our lifelong dreams. Not those little things like I want a new phone or a new car, but the big things. You know, what were you sent here to do? What is your life's purpose? And a lot of people, they know what their life purpose is, but it's just unspoken because they've spoken it before and people have criticized or condemned them. You can't do that. It's like when I grew up, I was working as a paper boy, and one day I gave half of my pocket money to the Salvation Army. I earned $1, I gave away 50 cents, and my mum said, "Why'd you do that?" And I said, "I like to help people." And I remember having a vision in my mind when I was younger of helping people. I was like a doctor. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't giving needles or pills or doing operations, but I was like a doctor. And the way that I describe it today was I was helping people heal. And then later on in life, I learned that the word doctor in, Latin is docere, which means to heal. And so it was me healing people. Oh, I get that. And that was always my vision. And it was something that I wanted to do at a younger age. And a lot of people have had those visions before age 10. They know what they wanted to be. I wanted to be an artist, or I wanted to make jewelry, or I wanted to sing. But they've spoken it out and somebody's criticised them. Oh, you can't make any money doing that. Nobody in this family's ever been a singer or a healer. Go and get a real job. But once we get that physical, emotional, and mental health sorted out, we can get back to what's really important, which is our life's purpose, and to pursue that.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny that you mentioned your young age, because I think I was 3 or 4 years old. My parents had been arguing, and my mom threatened to divorce my dad. And in my sleep, I screamed, "Enough!" in Spanish. And my dad, the next morning, he comes up to me, and I'm 3 or 4 years old, and he says to me, "Oh, you saved my marriage." And I was like, huh? Like looking at him, like I have no clue what he's talking about. But I remember that moment so vividly because he would repeat it. He would say, "Oh, you saved my marriage back in the day." Like, you know, he was so grateful. And I remember at that time, I thought, me? I could have that kind of, in my sleep, I could have that impact in someone's life like that. And so that one event got stored, and I wanted to be able to help people in that kind of transformational way where, you know, without a lot of effort, I could help someone. And that's what happened when I found biomagnetism. It wasn't until I found biomagnetism that I realized things can get so much easier. It doesn't have to take 20 years before you see if you've had an impact on someone's life. It doesn't have to take all this work to get this far. We could have profound impact on someone else's life if we find tools that really work, that really can give us an incredible jump start. And that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. And so many more are gathering to be able to help give people a jump start in the world.
Well, I like that analogy before, giving it a jump start. That was my favourite one. For people to learn more about the work that you're doing and learn more about your book, where should they go?
TheMagnetLady.net is my
Magnet
website.
Lady.
I do that. All my social media is there. The book is there. And it's also on Amazon.
What a great way to attract people, the Magnet Lady. Gaya, thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan.